Backup systems are effective as long as you have enough people to manage them. It got awfully hard to uphold traditions and rituals when families were torn apart and entire nations were forced to rebuild after the Great Wars. The world started speeding up. Every minute that was wasted outside of nation building was penalized. The greatest generation was tasked with this responsibility, and thereafter the silent generation grew up with austerity, frugality, and scarcity embedded in their DNA. Before refrigeration, daily market visits governed life. Preservation techniques like curing, fermentation, and pickling were the norm at home. They didn't take offense at watered down milk. No, in fact, substituting for cheaper alternatives and stretching ingredients was the only way to lead a life back then. The factories that had learned to feed tens of thousands of soldiers at scale had become remarkably good at shelf stability and mass production. They now needed a different customer profile and a new culture. Convenience was an engineering marvel born of this aftermath and advertised as equal parts ambition and utilization. The word convenience comes from the Latin convenire, to come together, to fit, to be suitable. And we had good reasons for it. For most of history, cooking was unpaid female labor, non-consensual, borderline slavery, and in return for safety, family, and security, or so the arrangement went. The Great Wars changed that equation forever. Feminism correctly argued that women shouldn't be confined to the kitchen anymore. Advertisers positioned their products as the solution to how families would eat if women were out working too. By the 1950s, corporations noticed something. A generation of women who had been told the kitchen was beneath them, and a market ready to be created. Refrigerators, microwaves, frozen meals, fast food chains, ready-made everything. Sold not as food, but as freedom. And rightly so. You have better things to do with your life than be practically stationed in a tiny space 4 times a day. But convenience food did not wait for a thoughtful societal conversation about how to redistribute domestic labor. We outsourced something critical, flouted the first rule of outsourcing, and are now trying to claw our way back. That was the need of the hour then, but nobody wants to admit who dropped the ball and why a bag of chips needs 20 odd ingredients, the names of which sound like a sci-fi movie. Sounds a bit like over-engineering. The ratio of things that come out of a can, pouch, or box now outweigh fresh produce.
So much to do, I'll never get through. I'm getting tired of cleaning things.
The industry's playbook has always been the same beat. Create create anxiety and then sell the solution. Oh, the kitchen is complicated. You don't have time to figure it out. Here, we figured it out for you. In the 50s, that anxiety was that cooking was drudgery. In the 70s, it meant you had better things to do. In the 90s, it became you didn't have the time. And in 2026, it's that you were exhausted. And they didn't just manufacture the anxiety. Research presented to the US Senate has argued that ultra-processed foods trigger genuine addictive mechanisms, a craveability quotient, and that the difficulty people have stopping isn't weakness or a lack of willpower. It's engineering. Salt, fat, and sugar layered precisely to keep you coming back. What a feat indeed. And here I thought I could do whatever I wanted once I set my mind to it. Everything you needed to run a life came under an interesting subject called home economics. At its core, it covered human development, personal and family finance, housing and interior design, food science and preparation. The list goes on. The problem was it was directed primarily towards girls, while boys focused on trade stuff, academic subjects. Feminists saw it as a cage. Administrators saw it as a cost. The subject got caught in this awkward political crossfire. The Vocational Education Act of 1963 quietly changed the rules. Federal funding for home economics was tied to gainful employment only. Schools could still teach students how to feed their own families, but the money for it stopped. Schools that trained them to feed someone else's family for wages kept the funding. From the 1970s onwards, students were trained for their academic and scientific pursuits, and everything outside of that was pawned off back to the homes. Only around 6,000 schools in the US still offer home economics in any form. A paper published in the JAMA in 2010 argued that parents today cannot be expected to teach children to cook because many parents never learned it themselves. The knowledge gap is now multi-generational. And decades later, the same territorial dynamic is alive and well. When I would visit my native town back in India in the mid-2000s, I would get disapproving looks for setting foot into the kitchen to clean utensils or cook something as a teenager, as though it was some kind of turf war. When someone develops type 2 diabetes at 45, from a lifetime of eating what was cheap, available, and designed to override their better judgment, their medical bills don't go back to the company that made it. They go to the individual, and when that individual can't pay up, which is increasingly becoming the norm, they go to the state from the taxpayer's wallet. Yeah, that could have been resources directed towards improved public education and health standards. And what could have been a productive life is now ridden with medical bills and mounting fear, possibly a job loss, and plenty of deepening animosity against a system that failed them. On a macro scale, this aggregates into productivity losses and a hemorrhaging GDP. Yet, all this while, the causes were simple failings and its consequences damnable. Today, the barrier is knowledge, it's information overload and cognitive load. The sheer number of micro decisions you're forced to make every single day just to keep your life from falling apart can't handle another decision like, what should I make for dinner today? Sometimes you don't even need a reason. You'll stare at the cooktop versus look at that bag of chips. And chips will win on most occasions. No wonder we laud those influencer reels who showcase their wonderfully identical lunchboxes for the week and stack them proudly as a way to tell us, saying, look, I thought about it before it consumed me. You can do it too. Look, none of this is bad. People are busy. Life is hard to get by. Convenience solves real problems. But every gain has a trade-off. Time replaced skill. Speed replaced participation. Now the food arrives, you eat, it's done. Skill replaced intimacy. Ease replaced friction. Something more intrinsic got traded away too. The ritual, the emotional anchor. For many, a therapeutic coping mechanism for the myriads of suffering they endure every day. The daily act of preparing food had given people a rhythm, a way of marking time, of creating something with their hands, of providing for someone they loved. The kitchen was a shrine where competence was fully owned, where qualifications and rejections from people were not a benchmark of your identity. It's a place that makes you feel you again.